Chapter 3901. Huang Fu Zhentian pressed both his hands on Pei Xing's shoulders as he sized him up. Finally, her gaze landed on the pair of eyes that were covered in dark golden flowing light. Your eyes. Huang Fu Zhentian's white brows creased tightly. Are you all right? Earlier I sensed that you had once again activated the Huangfu family's energy and I was worried about you, so I followed the feeling and rushed over. After seeing Pei Xing's eyes, Huang Fu Zhentian knew that what he had sensed earlier wasn't an illusion. When Pei Xing heard that, his throat tightened as his eyes stared blankly at the old man in front of him. His heart tightened a little. For so many years, this was the first time he felt concern from an elder. What's the matter? Are you hurt somewhere? Huang Fu Zhentian saw that he didn't speak for a long time as his white brows creased even tighter. He pulled Pei Xing's arm and took his pulse. Pei Xing regained his senses as he hurriedly shook his head. I'm fine. I'm fine. Luckily. Blood Mercenary Group and Ah Luo rushed over. I'm fine. Huang Fu Zhentian, who was taking Pei Xing's pulse, frowned even tighter. This child's body was too weak. He could tell that he had absolutely suffered hardship since young. He had to recuperate properly in future. Finding out that Pei Xing's body was weak, Huang Fu Zhentian's heart doted on Pei Xing even more. He patted Pei Xing's shoulder as he shifted his attention to the surroundings. When he saw the rows of disheveled killers kneeling on the ground, his gaze suddenly turned sharp. What on earth is going on? Huang Fu Zhentian strode towards the middle of the courtyard. The current him had a cold, hard expression as his dignified and noble aura wasn't concealed at all. Step by step, he neared the killers. It suppressed the formless pressure. Yiqing Luo had not expected that Huang Fu Zhentian would actually rush over. But just from Huang Fu Zhentian's reaction and performance earlier, he was indeed a qualified elder. His concern towards Pei Xing came from the bottom of his heart. But even after Pei Xing went to Heaven Realm, with Old Master looking after him, he would still be surrounded by danger. There were some things that she had to remind Old Master. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her pink lips curled up as she spoke out softly. Does Old Master Huang Fu really want to know what's going on? Someone dares to hurt my grandson. You're really not putting my Huangfu family in your eyes. Huang Fu Zhentian was furious to the extreme. He raised his leg and kicked the chest of an assassin. I'll definitely get to the bottom of this matter. There's no need to investigate. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up lazily. Old Master, don't be too full of yourself, after all. If you were to slap his face later, it would hurt Ah Xing's heart. Yiqing Luo's words were already very straightforward. Huang Fu Zhentian naturally understood the ridicule in her words. Immediately, their faces darkened. Yiqing Luo smiled again. Originally I wanted to trouble the brothers from Blood Red to help settle this matter, but now that Old Master Huang Fu is here, I shall hand this matter over to Old Master to settle. As Yiqing Luo said that, she looked towards Su Qingbing with a smile. What does Blood Red Group leader think? These killers' assassination target is Pei Xing. How Pei Xing wants to deal with it, we'll deal with it. Su Qingbing cooperated. It was one thing to guess something in her heart. But hearing an outsider saying that the assassination target was Pei Xing, this feeling was another thing. Huang Fu Zhentian's expression turned even darker. Chapter 3902. Yiqing Luo was obviously passing the right to choose to him. She wanted to see if he cared more about Pei Xing or his other grandchildren. Yes. The other grandchildren. Huangfu Trio. The killers from Heaven Realm, and their target was Pei Xing. It was obvious who the mastermind was. Pei Xing also understood the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. A trace of paleness appeared on his handsome face. He pursed his lips as he looked at Huang Fu Zhentian. As though he wanted to know, in Huang Fu Zhentian's heart, what kind of attitude would he use to settle this matter when his grandson did something wrong. Facing the gazes of a few juniors, Zhang Xian nodded. Especially his own grandson, he was extremely careful and hid his nervous gaze. Huangfu Zhentian's white brows creased tightly as he gritted his teeth. This matter concerns the Huangfu family, I will. Before he could finish his words, Pei Sheng, who was looking at Huangfu Zhentian cautiously, suddenly interrupted him. Forget it. Forget it? Huangfu Zhentian even suspected that he was hallucinating in his ears. The rest of the people also looked at Pei Sheng in astonishment. He was almost killed. And he said forget it? Was there a hole in his brain? That was a killer from heaven realm. It was obvious that he wanted his life. Now he had old Master Huangfu as his backing to settle this matter. Shouldn't he make use of this opportunity to let old Master Huangfu cut off the mastermind's chance? So that this kind of assassination would not happen again? Pei Sheng actually let it go just like that? The mercenaries present were unable to understand Pei Sheng's actions. Bo Somi's face was gloomy as he stared intently at Pei Sheng and Gu Zixi interlocked fingers. His heart was burning with anger. What, forget it? Isn't he afraid of death? A cowardly man, on what basis can he give Zixi happiness? He's not worthy at all. His enraged voice was definitely not soft. It also broke the shocked atmosphere because of Pei Sheng. Everyone's gazes turned towards Bo Somi. Although Huangfu Zhentian felt more or less relieved because of Pei Sheng's forget it, Huangfu Zhentian felt a sense of relief in his heart. But when he heard Bo Somi's rebuke and ridicule, his heart of protecting his child welled up. A pair of fierce and dignified eyes glared at Bo Somi. Bo Somi was forced to step back by Huangfu Zhentian's gaze. Gu Zixi also did not understand Pei Sheng's actions. She tugged at Pei Sheng's arm and looked at him in confusion before shaking her head at him. She also suggested that the best choice was to let the old man handle this matter. However, Pei Sheng smiled at her. There was a smile in his eyes. He seemed to be consoling her, telling her not to worry. Gu Zixi still wanted to say something. Yi Qing Luo patted her shoulder and shook her head at her. Pei Sheng had already made up his mind. This was Pei Sheng's own decision. He had his own considerations when he chose to forget it. Gu Zixi pursed her red lips. In the end, she did not speak again. She only held the man's arm tightly with one hand and used her actions to tell him, she's always been there. The other side. Su Qingbing had already turned to the side and stood in front of Bo Somi, blocking the old man's gaze. Huangfu Zhentian retracted his gaze and looked back at Pei Sheng as he frowned. You've been wrong today, are you sure? You don't need me to stand up for you? Pei Sheng didn't avoid his gaze this time. Instead he met the old man's gaze and nodded. I'm sure, this matter. Let's forget about it. Chapter 3903. These light words were so minute that if one didn't listen carefully, it was impossible to tell what he was talking about. Because of this, Huangfu Zhentian felt his heart jolting as though it was touched by something. These words were like needles stabbing into his heart. It was so uncomfortable. This child, what kind of life had he led in the past? Was that why he was being so careful now? Not wishing for him to be put in a difficult position, just let go of the chance to take revenge? Huangfu Zhentian was very clear what kind of people his 3 grandchildren were. Even if Pei Sheng let them off, those 3 people wouldn't be grateful. On the contrary, they would be insatiable. In a large family like the Huangfu family, Huangfu Zhentian wasn't averse to this kind of battle. But, seeing Pei Sheng, he always had a kind of guilt and heartache feeling. Huangfu Zhentian took a look at Pei Sheng as his expression was dignified as he spoke resolutely. Lad, you don't need to say any more. If I can't even protect my own grandson, then what's the point of bringing you back to the Huangfu family? I have my own plans for this matter. Pei Sheng opened his mouth and wanted to say something. But looking at Huangfu Zhentian's gaze, he still kept his mouth shut. Huangfu Zhentian patted Pei Sheng's shoulder heavily. Don't worry, no matter what, grandfather will help you to shoulder it. Pei Sheng's eyelashes moved as he looked at Huangfu Zhentian in a daze. Somewhere in his heart was being softened bit by bit. His lips moved. Grandfather, the word grandfather had yet to come out of his mouth. Suddenly, he felt a gust of cold wind, bringing along a lady's fragrance. It was accompanied by a lady's anxious voice, "Grandfather. Why aren't you resting in your room? Why did you come out alone?" A slender figure stood in between Pei Sheng and Huangfu Zhentian. It was Huangfu Fengyan. Her face was filled with anxiety as she looked at Huangfu Zhentian with an anxious expression, as though she was worried about something. At this distance, she could see the fine sweat on Huangfu Fengyan's forehead. Apparently, she had sprinted over. Yi Qing Luo specially swept a glance towards the direction where Huangfu Fengyan came from. But she didn't discover those two young masters from the Huangfu family. She raised her brows, feeling a little curious. Those two people actually didn't follow? Huangfu Fengyan actually came here alone? When he saw Huangfu Fengyan, Huangfu Zhentian's face darkened. His expression was extremely ugly as he gave Huangfu Fengyan a backhand slap. Huangfu Fengyan was hugging onto Huangfu Zhentian's arm and was unable to avoid it at all. Like a stone that was ejected, he flew out and fell heavily on the ground. Huangfu Fengyan was stunned by the beating. He sat stiffly on the ground. Around her, there were battered and exhausted killers, staring at her with wide eyes. Huangfu Fengyan's heart fell to the bottom. These assassins, all of them failed. As soon as her grandfather saw her, he gave her a slap. In other words, Grandpa already knew? Huangfu Fengyan widened her eyes in horror. No. Absolutely not. He couldn't ruin his image in his grandfather's heart. Huangfu Fengyan couldn't be bothered about the intense pain from being slapped flying, and her eyes were red as she looked at Huangfu Zhentian pitifully. Grandfather, why did you hit Yan? I don't have a granddaughter like you. Huangfu Zhentian's expression remained unchanged. Chapter 3904. She swayed as she stood up. He purposely revealed his red and swollen face from the beating, in an attempt to arouse Huangfu Zhentian's pity. Grandfather, don't listen to other people's slanderous words. That Yi Qing Luo, She had previously harmed Yan, in this way. Huangfu Fengyan pointed at Yi Qing Luo as she cried out in grievance. Yi Qing Luo. Why did the blame fall onto her again? Huangfu Zhentian felt even more disappointed. But, in front of so many people, he tried his best to suppress his anger. Huangfu Fengyan was after all his Huangfu family's fourth Mississippi. This kind of matter, although everyone was well aware of it. But they had to close the door and settle it privately. Otherwise, the entire Huangfu family's reputation would be thrown away. Huangfu Zhentian retracted his sharp gaze, and when he looked at Pei Sheng, he became even more benevolent than before. He patted Pei Sheng lightly. Pei Sheng, I will definitely give you an explanation. Really no need. Old master, don't affect Huangfu family because of me. Pei Sheng took a look at Huang Fengyan as he shook his head and rejected. The more he rejected, the more old master doted on him. The more he looked at Huang Fengyan, the more vicious his gaze became. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but clicked her tongue when she saw this scene. She crossed her arms in front of her chest as her lips twitched lazily. Following that, she pulled Gu Zishi to her side and whispered into her ear, Your Ah Sheng has improved, he actually knows how to scheme. At this point in time, no one knew Pei Sheng better than Gu Zishi, so she naturally understood Pei Sheng's meaning. She smiled as her eyes revealed some pride. No matter what he does, I like him. Yi Qing Luo pinched her. I know you like him, there's no need to keep talking about it. I'm just curious, how did your Ah Sheng suddenly light up this skill? White lotuses were not only limited to women. When a man turned white, it was even scarier. For example, the current Pei Sheng. He said, forget it. Did he really think that it was over? Not possible. Not possible. How could it be over, just like that? If it was according to their previous thoughts. Directly past this assassination matter to old master to handle. Indeed, they could get an explanation. But in the end, the Huangfu trio would absolutely not suffer too much damage. And in the future, it might even get worse. For example, he could be even more ruthless. But Pei Xing chose to give up on revenge on purpose. She felt sorry for the old man. Not only did she put herself in the position of a victim, but she also put herself in the position of a pitiful person who was not loved or loved. In this way, how could the old man really let it go? The old master would only feel sorry for Pei Xing. They would not easily let off the mastermind behind the assassination. Even if Huangfu and the other two didn't receive any substantial punishment in the end. However, in the future, the old master would feel guilty and dote on his kind-hearted and relatable little grandson even more. Pei Xing's move. It was a beautiful move. Gu Zixi eyes sparkled as she looked at Pei Xing. Yiqing Luo couldn't stand this simple-minded couple style as she pushed Gu Zixi to Pei Xing's side, interrupting Huangfu Fengyan's sob. Old man, it's getting late. Everyone should disperse. Sheng and Zixi's wounds need to be treated as well. Mention the wound. The old man felt even more guilty. Chapter 3905. Pei Xing hesitated for a moment. He glanced at Huangfu Fengyan's direction and shook his head. There's no need. I still have to tidy up this courtyard. An assassin had broken in. And a fight. The courtyard was already in shambles. Huangfu Zhentian still wanted to say something. Yiqing Luo continued, Old master, Zixi is an alchemist. With Zixi taking care of her, you don't have to worry. After saying that, she glanced meaningfully at the assassins. The old man must have other things to deal with, right? Huangfu Zhentian's expression swiftly became extremely gloomy. His cold eyes looked at the miserable assassins on the ground, then looked at Huangfu Fengyan. He snorted coldly, his majestic anger surging. Huangfu Fengyan felt a chill run down her spine. There was only one thought in his mind. That was, he absolutely could not admit it. Once she admitted it, she would lose everything she had now. Huangfu Zhentian's gaze grew fiercer and fiercer. After staring at Huangfu Fengyan for a while, he forcefully closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, the emotions on his face were much calmer. He clasped his hands at Su Qingbing with a solemn expression. Bloody leader, thank you for your help today. I, Huangfu Zhentian, will remember your kindness. I'll definitely repay your kindness in the future. Then, he said, can you let me handle these assassins? It's not really a favor. Bloody mercenary group didn't come here to save Pei Xing. Su Qingbing's lips curled into a smile. As for these assassins, if old master Huangfu wants them, feel free to take them. Not to save that brat. Huangfu Zhentian caught the main point and frowned slightly. What do you mean by that? As profound practitioners of the heaven realm, which was above the earth realm, basically, he did not know much about the people or forces in the lower realms. But there were three great forces in the land, and even old master Huangfu, who was in the heaven, had heard of them. One was the gathering place of lunatics, the underworld palace. One of them was the Linglong Palace, which nurtured the saintesses of the three main cities. The other was the bloody mercenary group in this world. Even if bloody mercenary group was the second-ranked mercenary group, his reputation rose like a crane. This was because the number one mercenary group had already developed to the heaven realm. And this bloody mercenary group was also known as the second mercenary group to develop their forces into heaven realm. Huangfu Zhentian's attitude toward Su Qingbing was so gentle. Aside from the fact that Bloody had saved Pei Xing, he was also impressed by the bloody mercenary's abilities. Su Qingbing raised her slender eyebrows as a playful smile appeared on her beautiful face. She walked towards Pei Xing. No, to be more precise, it was Gu Zixi who was walking towards Pei Xing. He then raised his hand and placed it lazily on Gu Zixi's shoulder. As he raised his head, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. There was an indescribable meaning in his smile. I brought my Bloody Red's elite troops here to save my troublesome vice regiment commander. Saving Pei Sheng was just a convenience. So. Old Master Huangfu, you really don't have to take it to heart. Vice leader? Gu Zishi. This news caused Huangfu Zhentian to be stunned. The one who had the most exaggerated reaction was Huangfu Fengyan. She almost bounced up from the ground and glared at Gu Zishi. Her voice was trembling. Her Vice Regiment Commander? Are you kidding me? Su Qingbing tilted her head and glanced sideways at Huangfu Fengyan. Chapter 3906. No. I don't believe. Huangfu Fengyan's eyes widened in disbelief as her body staggered. She had naturally heard of the Blood Mercenary Group's name. She also knew that it was a mercenary group which many large forces admired. Gu Zishi, that slut, was just a lowly slut who could only cling on to Pei Sheng's illegitimate son. How could she change so quickly? And become the vice group leader of the Blood Mercenary Group? Vice group leader. It wasn't as simple as the Blood Mercenary Group. That was second only to the group leader. Huangfu Fengyan couldn't believe that the lady whom she had belittled would have such a powerful background. Huangfu Fengyan's sharp voice made Pei Sheng regain his senses. He also widened his eyes in shock and astonishment. He only knew that Gu Zishi and the Blood Mercenary Group had a good relationship. It was rumored that Gu Zishi had saved the Blood Mercenary Group's group leader on the West Cliff Mountain, hence the Blood Mercenary Group would occasionally help Gu Zishi or gather treasures. But he had never thought that Gu Zishi and the Blood Mercenary Group had such a deep relationship. In his mind, he suddenly recalled what Yi Qing Luo said previously. Gu Zishi gave up everything in the earth realm and followed him to the heaven realm. This everything. He didn't think too deeply at that time. Until now. He finally understood. This everything was really Gu Zishi's everything. She could even give up the identity of the Blood Mercenary Group's vice group leader. Gu Zishi's feelings for him. How deep was it? Pei Sheng only felt his heart suddenly constricting. As if something was squeezing it tightly. His eyes felt a little warm and sore. He looked at Gu Zishi without blinking. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and hugged Gu Zishi's petite body tightly in his arms. His head rested on Gu Zishi's shoulder. He said firmly, Zishi. When we reach the heaven realm, we'll get married. Get married. These two words made Gu Zishi grab Pei Sheng's clothes tightly in surprise. Her eyes instantly turned red as she nodded her head vigorously. The two of them hugged each other tightly. On the other side, Huangfu Zhentian took a deep look at the two of them hugging each other and looked at Su Qingbing. Although he didn't show it on his face. But in his heart, he was shocked when he heard this news. In his heart, he was even more satisfied with his grandson and the woman that he had taken a liking to. In his heart, a decision was slowly forming. His expression was solemn as he looked at Su Qingbing and said, regardless of the reason why Leader Scarlet had intervened, it is a fact that Leader Scarlet has saved that boy. I will definitely remember this kindness. As for other matters, don't worry, Leader Scarlet. Since I've personally brought that boy and Lady Gu to the heaven realm, I will definitely protect them. Any intelligent person would be able to tell. Su Qingbing had purposely revealed the reason why Gu Zishi was the vice leader of Bloody. To put it bluntly, he just wanted to show Gu Zishi how powerful she was. At the same time, it would change Gu Zishi's position in the Huangfu family's heart. It was also a warning to old Master Huangfu. Gu Zishi was not someone without a backer. If Gu Zishi was injured in the heaven realm, Bloody Mercenary Group would be the first to stand behind Gu Zishi and take revenge for her with all their might. The group of people said a few more words. Old Master Huangfu dragged Huangfu Fengyan away. The Bloody Mercenaries followed behind Elder Huangfu with the assassins in tow. After a while, the courtyard quietened down again. Yi Qing Luo took a look at the two who were still hugging each other tightly and sighed. What a pair of silly lovers. Muddle-headedly registered for the QQ reading character ranking. The babies helped to make a heart sign and gave a like. They didn't wish to rush into the top 40, they only wished to be in the top 100 and not let the crippled 7 emperors appear too desolate. Chapter 3907. She simply shifted her gaze away and looked at Su Qingbing, who had yet to leave. Su Qingbing still maintained a lazy posture. That dignified look on her elegant face had been retracted by quite a bit. She just raised her head and looked at that figure on the wall. Between her beautiful eyes, there was some brilliance flowing. But when Yiqing Luo took a careful look, it was a stretch of deep, without a single bit of emotion. She followed Su Qingbing's gaze. On the wall, the red-robed man who was standing against the wind met her eyes expressionlessly. The person Su Qingbing was looking at was Zhu Wu Xian. She raised her brows, feeling that she seemed to have discovered something incredible. Since he's safe, I'll make a move first. I'll leave these 2 fools in your care. Su Qingbing seemed to have sensed Yiqing Luo's gaze and immediately retracted her gaze, as she pretended not to mind and waved her hand. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a crescent shape as her figure moved and appeared next to Su Qingbing. She raised her hand and hooked onto Su Qingbing's shoulder. The young lady gave a teasing smile as she teased, "Why? Are you in a hurry to leave, afraid that I'll see through some secret that I shouldn't see?" Su Qingbing's beautiful eyes flashed as she subconsciously looked at Zhu Wu Xian. After this action was done, Su Qingbing then realized that she had been hooked. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened. Her curved brows and narrow long eyes outlined an arc, like a blooming datura flower, so alluring that it made one suffocated. Tisk, Su Qingbing's look made Yiqing Luo even more interested. She was really curious. What had happened between Su Qingbing and Zhu Wu Xian? She could tell. Su Qingbing's impression of Zhu Wu Xian was very deep. I have to return to Blood Color headquarters first. Su Qingbing's hair stood on end from Yiqing Luo's meaningful smile. She hurriedly found an excuse. She turned around and hurriedly leapt up the wall. On top of the wall, Su Qingbing intentionally halted her footsteps. Her vision clashed with Zhu Wu Xian. In just a few breaths' time, she raised her breath again and her figure flashed as she blended into the night. The courtyard, which had turned into ruins, fell into a strange silence. That pair of foolish lovers were still hugging each other, unwilling to part. A fool is a fool. Hugging each other and feeling each other's warmth, this was their happiness. But Yiqing Luo shot a glance at the both of them as her lips suddenly curled into a crafty arc. Then, he lifted his leg and kicked Pei Xing's butt. Pei Xing's entire body was kicked forward by the force. Gu Zixi almost lost her footing. Following that, several medicine bottles were stuffed into their arms. Get out of the house and make love. Yiqing Luo turned their bodies around and pushed them towards the room which wasn't affected by the battle earlier. Pei Xing was forcefully pushed to the door as he struggled to turn his head around to take a look at Yiqing Luo. But because of Yiqing Luo's strength, he was unable to resist at all. "Ah, Luo, don't tell me you don't like our relationship because His Majesty is not here and you can't stand it?" Yiqing Luo's expression instantly sunk. The hand that grabbed Pei Xing's shoulder suddenly tightened. "Ah!" Pei Xing screamed miserably as his shoulder struggled to pull away from Yiqing Luo's palm. It was so painful that he almost cried. Yiqing Luo gave a fake smile. "If you still want to hug a beauty to sleep tonight, you'd better shut your mouth and roll into the room." Pei Xing, this smile is so scary. He swiftly hugged Gu Zixi tightly as he escaped into the room. Chapter 3908. In the courtyard, there was only Yiqing Luo left. She then stretched her body lazily. As she yawned, she looked towards the red figure standing on the wall. "The show has ended, aren't you leaving?" Zhu Wu Xian's vision, from the start, was fixed on her. When he saw the young lady's languid look, her long and narrow eyes were filled with a lazy misty look towards him. His eyes glowed with a bright light. Even his pitch-black pupils involuntarily contracted. His hands, which were hanging by his side, clenched into fists. Especially when that young lady yawned, with a soft and coquettish voice rang. His body, almost instantly, turned stiff and taut. For a long time, the man didn't reply. Yiqing Luo lowered her hands as she raised her brows at him, meeting with Zhu Wu Xian's scorching gaze. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly as she tilted her head, her eyes revealing a smile which didn't look like a smile. Have you seen enough? This sentence made Zhu Wu Xian have a response. His thin lips moved slightly as his voice was very cold. Not enough. If you're still conscious, then please go ahead. Take care, I won't send you off. Yiqing Luo intentionally ignored his provocative words as she impatiently waved her hand. Zhu Wu Xian instead flew down from the wall. He got close to Yiqing Luo. The red-robed man and red-robed young lady's figures intertwined. Yiqing Luo didn't evade. Instead, she faced the man's approaching face, raising her head as her lips curled into a bright smile. This smile, like a blooming poppy flower, giving off a suffocating charm, magnified under his eyes. Zhu Wu Xian's heart skipped a beat. Immediately after, his body abruptly pulled away from Yiqing Luo. His eyes were flickering with erratic emotions. Yiqing Luo revealed an understanding smile. She was very clear. The more she expressed that she didn't want to interact with him, Zhu Wu Xian would be insatiable, wanting to leave a place in her heart. On the contrary, she cooperated with Zhu Wu Xian's words. Zhu Wu Xian would be even more shy than her. Looking at Yiqing Luo's teasing smile, Zhu Wu Xian's pupils contracted. He suddenly stretched out his hand and clasped Yiqing Luo's wrist as his eyes stared straight at her. Do you think that I don't dare to do anything to you? Yes. Yiqing Luo replied straightforwardly. If you dare. When I just arrived at the Earth realm, you painstakingly imprisoned me for half a month, and erased all my memories. You would have done it. The hand that was clasping her wrist suddenly tightened. Even Zhu Wuxin stiffened for a moment. Even now, you still blame me? Zhu Wuxin stared at her. It was not a question, but a statement. It would be a lie to say that I don't blame him. Yiqing Luo didn't try to hide it. No matter which woman it is, if she was kidnapped by another man and imprisoned by his side for as long as half a month, would she not blame that man? Zhu Wuxin's eyes darkened, and he clenched his fists. His slender fingers pressed onto Yiqing Luo's wrist, causing some pain. Zhu Wu Xian didn't bother about Yiqing Luo's slightly creased brows because of the pain, but instead pressed down even tighter. Even the words that came out of his mouth were mixed with the meaning of gnashing his teeth. I shouldn't have been soft on you in the first place. Not soft? His meaning was that he should have taken the opportunity to eat her up in the first place? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly, but there wasn't any hint of a smile in her eyes. If you really did that, then between us, there would no longer be any feelings. The next time we meet, we will be enemies. Enemies too. At least, you will not belong to that man. Zhu Wuxin's eyes seemed to be surging with waves. Chapter 3909. Yiqing Luo frowned. Looking at the madness in Zhu Wuxin's eyes, her heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously wanted to break free from Zhu Wuxin's grip. However, Zhu Wuxin tightened his grip. He reached out with his long arms. He then pressed Yiqing Luo heavily into his arms. The plum fragrance which assaulted her nostrils made Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly in discomfort. She struggled. Zhu Wuxin. Woman, you are really heartless. Zhu Wuxin was almost gnashing his teeth next to her ear. This time, I really do not want to go easy on you. As soon as he finished speaking, he exerted strength in his arm. The man's warm breath rushed over from a close distance. There was also a hint of fragrance mixed with it that made her feel alarmed. Almost at the instant the man lowered his head. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed coldly. His dark force burst forth. He flipped his palm, intending to attack Zhu Wuxin and avoid his approach. It was at this moment A heavy groan sounded beside his ear. The hand on his waist suddenly loosened. What replaced it was another strong and powerful force. The familiar fragrance of sandalwood wafted into his nose. Yiqing Luo turned her head happily. Sure enough, she saw her man appear behind her. Dmo Xian had one arm around her waist. His expression was noble and elegant as his gaze was filled with a chilly glint as he stared intently at Zhu Wu Exan. I'm late. The man's deep and mellow voice instantly soothed Yiqing Luo's restless heart. His large and thick palms pulled the young girl's delicate body into his embrace. It was different, thick, and sturdy. A different kind of warmth. It was a different taste. It was a completely different feeling from Zhu Wuxin. Dmo Xian. Was the feeling she wanted to have the most. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Suddenly, she raised her lips and tightly wrapped her arms around the man's firm waist. She buried her face in his chest. Struck by the palm, Zhu Wuxin had to retreat several steps before he could stabilize himself. The flame-like red swayed. After Yiqing Luo absorbed the warmth, she popped her head out to take a look at Zhu Wu Exan. He felt that the current Zhu Wuxin had a gloomy feeling, as if the flames all over his body were about to be extinguished. As if I had lost all my lifelight. He seemed to have sensed her gaze. Zhu Wuxin clutched his chest and looked at her with a pale face. His eyes met hers. A smile appeared on his grave and stern face. His lips curled up slightly. There was a hint of bitterness in his voice. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but creased her slender brows once again. He didn't have time to think about it. A large palm suddenly covered her eyes. In front of him, there was only warmth, and he couldn't see anything. Don't look at him. The man's domineering voice rang in her ears, and there was a hint of jealousy in his tone. Then, he raised his head and looked at Zhu Wu Exan. His entire body exuded a chill. Zhu Wu Exan, I haven't settled the score with you for what happened last time. You dare to play the same trick again? The moment he opened his mouth. He was not angry, but he exuded an imposing aura. Zhu Wuxin sneered. What? I merely touched her, yet you're already so furious. Could it be that you think she's dirty? As soon as he said that, the surrounding temperature had also dropped to the extreme. Dmo Xian's eyes gleamed coldly. The murderous aura was also sweeping wildly. But Zhu Wu Exan laughed crazily. That grave and stern face looked extremely insane. Both their profound rays intertwined. Just as it was about to explode. Suddenly, a slender fair hand gently placed on the back of the hand which covered her eyes. Slowly, it pulled that hand down. The young lady's eyes regained its clarity. Chapter 39:10. The young lady's alluring face was filled with calmness. The corners of his lips curled into a mocking sneer. Even the gaze which she shot towards Zhu Wu Exan was filled with viciousness. This gaze made Zhu Wu Exan's heart felt as though it was pierced by something as it trembled fiercely. As though something was gradually disappearing between him and Yiqing Luo. The red-robed man's eyes were filled with madness. At this moment, there was finally a slight fluctuation. The wind brought along the young lady's ridiculing laughter. Zhu Wu Exan, do you think that after knowing that you imprisoned me for nearly half a month, I will still be defenseless against you? Zhu Wu Exan, do you think that after doing this, I will belong to you again? Zhu Wu Exan. The dirty person, is you. The young lady spoke each word extremely clearly. Her voice was very sweet. But in Zhu Wu Exan's ears, it was like a sharp blade, fiercely slicing his eardrums. That sharp blade went down from his ears to his heart. And then slowly sliced his heart, bit by bit. Unbearable pain. Zhu Wu Exan shut his eyes tightly. From the moment you made a move against me earlier, I was completely certain. Earlier you stopped me several times, not allowing me to rush over to save Pei Sheng, obviously. On purpose. At that moment, Yi Qing Luo was already suspicious towards Zhu Wu Xian's appearance. But because it was Zhu Wu Xian, she didn't investigate further. Because she knew that Zhu Wu Xian's obsession towards her would absolutely not harm her. So she chose to believe in Zhu Wu Xian. Until just now, when she smelled that fragrance from the man. Yi Qing Luo then realized that everything was because she was too naive. From the start of Zhu Wu Xian's appearance till now, all had a motive. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wu Xian heard Yi Qing Luo's ridiculing words. And when she looked at him, that disappointment and ridicule. His heart felt as though it was being sliced into pieces. He subconsciously wanted to explain, Yi Qing Luo, is not. Are you trying to say that it's not what I think? Yi Qing Luo interrupted his words, as her smile became even more contemptuous. Even between his brows, there was a mocking smile that was not a smile. Zhu Wu Xian. Suddenly, she called his name in a serious tone. The young lady withdrew herself from Dmo Xian's embrace as she lifted her light footsteps and walked towards him. The girl's expression was cold, and her picturesque eyebrows were filled with killing intent. Zhu Wu Xian felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. He was so nervous that he could only stare at the girl's approaching face and clench his fists tightly, waiting for her to continue. You want to explain, right? All right, I'll give you a chance. She stood 3 steps away from Zhu Wu Xian. Then, she raised her eyes and stared straight into his eyes. Zhu Wu Xian's heart skipped a beat again. Do you dare look me in the eye and tell me that your appearance today is not a coincidence, but an accident? Zhu Wu Xian's eyes darkened. Even his cold face was covered with a layer of frost. This reaction. Even if he didn't answer. Yi Qing Luo had already gotten her answer. She sneered and looked at Zhu Wu Xian. She couldn't help but laugh. Zhu Wu Xian, if you really want to lie to me, you should lie to the end. I want to lie to you. Zhu Wu Xian's expression was gloomy and cold as his eyes stared deadly at Yi Qing Luo, as a whirlpool appeared in between his brows. But I know that the minute I really lie to you, you will really become a stranger to me. It's not fake. Yi Qing Luo smiled. Her smile was gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. Chapter 39:11. It wasn't fake. Which meant, no matter what his answer was. Like strangers, these 4 words couldn't be fake. Zhu Wu Xian's heartstrings quivered. He thought. After Yi Qing Luo found out that he had imprisoned her for half a month, she wasn't too angry and still treated him the same as before. He thought. Yi Qing Luo wouldn't blame him. But he had never expected Yi Qing Luo to be so resolute. So resolute that when he intended to do it for the second time, she would not hesitate to cut off all relations with him. His heart, as compared to the first time he met her, was even more painful from her cold attitude and when she totally didn't recognize him. It was so painful that he was about to die. He thought. He was already numb and no matter how painful it was, he could maintain his calmness, to stand calmly in front of Yi Qing Luo and continue his stubbornness. But the feeling now proved that his thought was really just a thought. His heart would hurt. When he met with the young lady's icy cold gaze, his heart would surge with waves. Not to mention standing in front of her. Now, he only had the urge to escape from her accusing gaze. Zhu Wu Xian, you're still working with the secluded palace, right? You want to help the secluded palace to deal with the people around me, right? Even when Yi Qing Luo saw his cold face, that complicated and painful expression, she didn't let him off. She was still overbearing. The imposing manner became more and more pressing. The expression on Zhu Wu Xian's face became even more conflicted. He moved his thin lips and his voice sounded a little hoarse. No. It's not like that, He wanted to explain but when the words were about to come out of his mouth, he licked his dry lips and stopped the words from leaving his mouth. Immediately after, his thin lips pursed, not saying a word. Yi Qing Luo waited for a moment, and on seeing him maintaining his silence, her lips curled into a sneer of ridicule. Explain, I'm not being unreasonable. If you don't want to listen to your explanation, I'll give you a chance to explain. Zhu Wu Xian continued to stare at her without blinking, not saying a word. Yi Qing Luo's gaze towards him became even colder. Since you're not going to explain, then I'll speak according to my understanding. Her brows rose as her tone was filled with ridicule. Do you think that after breaking my wings, I can only choose to rely on you? Ha, Zhu Wu Xian, do you think I'm such a person? No. Light flickered in Zhu Wu Xian's eyes, and he wanted to answer. However, he still held back and did not say it out loud. If Yi Qing Luo was that kind of person, he would absolutely not take another look at her. But it was precisely because he knew this. He wanted to see even more. After Yi Qing Luo lost everything, what would they become? At that time, would his obsession still be as deep as it was now? Zhu Wuxin, just give up. Even if you want to break my wings, even if you want to separate me and Xian. This lifetime, the next lifetime, the next lifetime, no matter how long it takes. I, Yi Qing Luo, will never choose you. Yi Qing Luo's voice was cold and ruthless. The sonorous voice was like a huge hammer that landed heavily on Zhu Wuxin's heart. Zhu Wu Xian's body shook violently. He flicked his sleeves. A cool breeze swept past. Several sharp sounds of wind could be heard in the air. The red figure had already disappeared before his eyes. In her resolute words, Zhu Wuxin fled in panic. Yi Qing Luo was expressionless, as though she had no emotions towards his escape. Only after she was sure that Zhu Wu Xian's presence had completely disappeared. Chapter 39:12. The young lady's face was pale, and there was no longer that overbearing aura from earlier on. Her petite body was caught by someone. Tightly, she was brought into a warm and spacious embrace. Lil Luo, Dmo Xian's voice was filled with anxiety and worry. Yi Qing Luo wanted to open her eyes and smile at him to reassure him. But the minute she opened her eyes, it was a patch of blood color before her eyes, which immediately turned into a patch of pitch black. She was unable to open her eyes. The dizziness in her head made her lose the ability to think. Finally, under Dmo Xian's gentle and affectionate call of Lil Luo, she completely lost all consciousness. Lil Luo, Sensing the change in Yi Qing Luo's breathing, Dmo Xian's voice suddenly rose as his shimmering eyes stared intently at the person in his arms. After checking the young lady's pulse, Dmo Xian's expression turned darker. His fingers clenched tightly as he gritted his teeth and spat out 3 words, Zhu Wu Xian. Damn that Zhu Wu Xian. No matter if Lil Luo, would forgive Zhu Wu Xian, he would absolutely not forgive her. Dmo Xian tightened his arms as he raised his voice and called out in a low voice, Xian, Beiyuan. 2 figures, one tall and one short, appeared in the night sky. Guard this place, don't let other blind things come near. Dmo Xian instructed and carried Yi Qing Luo as he flew away. Tang Beiyuan stared blankly at the direction where Dmo Xian left, watching his figure disappear completely. She then regained her senses as she slowly stood up. The man on the side was tall and imposing, with a handsome face, but his brows were rigid and solemn. The man's vision had been on Tang Beiyuan. Seeing that she stood up and was still in a daze, he comforted her, "Madam will be fine." Hearing the man's voice, Tang Beiyuan's eyelashes fluttered. When she raised her head, her lips curled into a smile, "Amen, I know. With the overlord around, Madam will definitely be fine." She had seen with her own eyes how much her master cared about Yi Qing Luo. Her daze wasn't because she was worried about Yi Qing Luo, but very envious. Envious of the relationship between the overlord and Madam. No matter what time it was, it would always make one laugh unknowingly. As for her, even though her fiancé was by her side, He could even touch it with his hand. However, she still felt as if they were thousands of miles apart and out of reach. Tang Beiyuan lowered her eyes and the smile on her face disappeared. Yuan, The man sensed that Tang Beiyuan was upset. He raised his hand and placed it on her shoulder in confusion. What's wrong? Tang Beiyuan raised her head and stared blankly at Lang Lixian, who was a head taller than her. Soon, a smile appeared on his face. I'm fine. Lang Lixian caressed her face and didn't ask any more questions. The man wiped his face with his slightly cold hand. Tang Beiyuan instinctively reached out and grabbed his hand. Lang Lixian was startled and looked at her doubtfully. Tang Beiyuan gritted her teeth, mustered up her courage, and placed the man's hand on her waist. Then she turned around and hooked her arms around his neck. It's been a long time since we've been this close. To be more precise, it had been a long time since they last saw each other. Every time they met, it was just a hurried glance. After that, they would leave in a hurry. Not to mention a hug to feel each other's warmth. There wasn't even a chance to greet each other. Chapter 39:13. Lang Lixian had just finished his words when he used his actions to express his attitude. He pulled Tang Beiyuan's hand away and widened the distance between the both of them. Immediately after, he leapt up the wall in the dark and his entire figure was hidden in the darkness. Tang Beiyuan stood in a daze on the spot. The hands which were pulled away by the man were still hanging stiffly in the air. After some time, he slowly retracted his hands. There seemed to be a man's touch on her wrists. There seemed to be a man's scent in her nose. Tang Beiyuan's lips suddenly twitched as she gave a soft laugh. She turned her head and walked towards the other side of the wall. Hiding in the dark with the man on the left and right. And completely hiding the sparkling eyes which flashed past her eyes. Qiao residence. Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo back to the room. His fiery appearance was accompanied by a powerful pressure. It made those who had just returned to the Qiao residence ran out of the room in shock. It was so late at night, this was very scary, all right? They thought that the secluded palace had made a comeback. But after seeing the unconscious Yiqing Luo, everyone couldn't stand still as they flocked over. Kitty Li was carried out from Zhou Mo's arms and she was still rubbing her eyes sleepily, but when she saw Yiqing Luo being placed on the bed, her eyes suddenly opened wide. She scurried out of Zhou Mo's arms and pounced towards the bed. Sister. What happened to sister? What happened to her? Kitty Li held Yiqing Luo's hand but realized that her hand was ice cold. Old Lai didn't feel well, earlier at the Treasures Exchange Hall, wasn't she still fine? How long has it been? In his impression, Yiqing Luo and the Overlord were on the same level of abnormality. No one could hurt her. So on the way back to the Qiao residence, they didn't specially wait for Yiqing Luo. No one had expected. It was such a coincidence. Yiqing Luo was coincidentally injured. Gue Wu stood in the crowd as he frowned slightly. Apparently, he was puzzled over why Yiqing Luo was injured and was carried back by Dmo Xian. She's fine. Among the many concerned voices, Dmo Xian's slightly hoarse voice rang. He also successfully suppressed the voices of those who were talking at once. Dmo Xian sat on the bedside. Kitty Li looked at Dmo Xian and then at Yiqing Luo. Under Zhou Mo's tugging, he reluctantly let go of Yiqing Luo's hand and gave up his position to Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian held Yiqing Luo's hand, using his broad palm to warm Yiqing Luo's hand as he continued to speak calmly. I'm here, everyone, don't worry. Everyone turned pale and wanted to ask more questions. But looking at Dmo Xian's expression. However, none of them dared to ask. In the end, Gue Wu took the lead and walked out of the room. Only then did the others leave the room one after another, looking back every few steps. After closing the door, Kitty Li pursed her lips. She grabbed Zhou Mo's hand with displeasure and worry, pinching it from time to time. What's wrong with my sister? Dizun and brother-in-law didn't say anything. How can I be at ease? The overlord is more worried about her than any of us. Zhou Mo caressed Kitty Li's head. Since the overlord says it's fine, then Xiao Qing Luo will be fine. Qing Luo she. Suddenly, a soft but emotionless voice was heard from the crowd. Everyone's gazes turned towards the direction of the voice. Chapter 39:14. Drugged unconscious? What kind of joke was that? Yi Qing Luo that kind of pervert. She was a top-tier alchemist. How could she be drugged unconscious? It's the truth. Mo Yuing blinked her empty eyes and repeated seriously, you can ask her when she wakes up. Looking at the little loli's serious look. Everyone was still in disbelief. After all, drugging had always been Yi Qing Luo's specialty. I believe you. Suddenly, a deep voice was heard. Xiao Yinyan had appeared at the corner of the long corridor and was slowly walking towards their direction. The moment Xiao Yinyan appeared, everyone stopped their discussion. The man walked slowly to Mo Yuing. His gaze was deep like the sea and his silver hair hung down his cheeks, adding a mysterious and noble feeling to the man. Mo Yuing raised her head and blinked as she looked at the approaching figure. The aura from the man made her heart, or rather, her soul, had a restless feeling. It was very uncomfortable and she didn't like this feeling. She wanted to avoid it. But Xiao Yinyan seemed to see through her thoughts as he stretched out his hand and blocked in front of her. The man's gaze was burning, as if he could see through Mo Yuying's soul. You have always been sensitive to the people you care about and can easily see the condition of others. This point. You still haven't changed. Mo Yuying's brows were tightly knitted together as she looked at him with her empty eyes. However, his pupils were not focused at all, and there was not the slightest bit of spirit in them. When these eyes looked over. For a moment, it made one feel that this pair of eyes were already blind. Anyone who was stared at by such empty eyes for a long time would have a creepy feeling. However, Xiao Yinyan met her gaze and gently curved his thin lips. He smiled and said, even your expression of disgust hasn't changed. Mo Yuying's stiff expression loosened for a moment. When the others heard this sweet, cloying words, all of them rubbed their arms. How did Xiao Yinyan see the bored expression on Mo Yuying's face? That was obviously expressionless, okay? That was what everyone thought in their hearts. But as the person involved, Mo Yuing was shocked. She had always been unable to express her emotions. Her face was stiff. His eyes were lifeless. Even his voice was completely emotionless. In addition, she couldn't even express ordinary emotions. Even a sensitive lady like Yi Qing Luo would not be able to detect her emotions. This man in front of him, yet he could see through her heart so easily. Could it be that she really knew him before? After Lin Mengya invited him out of the room, the chatter outside the door continued. Dmo Xian looked at the unconscious young girl. His fingertips covered the young girl's slightly furrowed brows and gently smoothed her brows. Then, with a flick of his sleeve, an invisible wave spread out in the room, forming an oval transparent barrier that enveloped the entire room. It also successfully blocked out the noisy discussion outside the door. He held the girl's cold hand tightly, one hand on his cheek and the other on his mouth to warm it. His peerless face was filled with a peaceful expression of pampering. There was not the slightest hint of anxiety or unease. He wasn't worried that this medicine would cause any harm or influence to Yi Qing Luo. Because this was the medicine which Zhu Wu Xian had given to Yi Qing Luo. Even if Zhu Wu Xian was working together with the secluded palace, he would absolutely not hurt Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 39:15. But he was unable to ascertain when Yi Qing Luo would wake up. Dmo Xian's eyes were fixated on the young lady's peaceful sleeping face without blinking. Her eyes were calm, pure, and beautiful. But that pair of icy cold hands couldn't be warmed up no matter what. His broad palm closed over one of her small hands. The other hand stretched out his slender fingers, gently caressing the young lady's icy cold but peaceful facial features. After gazing at it for some time, he sighed softly. Straightening himself, he took off his coat. Lifting up a corner of the blanket, he burrowed into it. Even though she was covered in the blanket, the young lady's body was still icy cold. Dmo Xian laid on one side, his arms scooped the young lady into his arms. Using his own warmth, he enveloped the young lady completely. If it wasn't for the fact that the young lady's breathing was smooth and her pulse was steady. This icy cold touch. It was indeed very scary. The person in his arms seemed to have felt the source of warmth. Her little body shrunk into the man's arms. Her peaceful little face revealed a blissful and satisfied smile. Dmo Xian placed his chin on her head. Feeling the person in his arms, infected with his warmth, his scent. The last time, in the Nirvana realm's passageway to the upper realm, he was careless and allowed Zhu Wu Xian to snatch Lil Luo away. That was close to half a month's time. Lil Luo was imprisoned in such a state by Zhu Wu Xian. This time. How long would Lil Luo sleep for? Yiqing Luo's head was groggy, as though she was being pressed down heavily by something. She was so exhausted that she couldn't even move a muscle. She creased her brows in pain. She wanted to raise her hand to rub her temples. But her arms were stiff and so heavy that she couldn't lift them at all. She struggled to open her heavy eyes, trying to see clearly what was going on with her. But when she opened her eyes, the surroundings were all white and there was nothing at all. Deathly silence. Where was this? Why was she here? She remembered. She sensed that something was wrong with Zhu Wu Xian and wanted to leave. But Zhu Wu Xian stretched out his hand and pulled her. There was a strange smell coming from Zhu Wu Xian's body. That smell. It was a knockout drug that could make a person unconscious. However, even if she reacted, she would not be able to. However, he still couldn't help but smell that scent. In the end, she seemed to have held on till Zhu Wu Xian left and she fell into Dmo Xian's arms. Yes. Xian. Wasn't she in Xian's arms? That was absolute safety. Why did she suddenly appear here? And it's so uncomfortable. Yiqing Luo's mind was filled with doubts but was unable to get an answer. Just then, the vast expanse of whiteness in front of him suddenly dispersed. Then, a 10,000 feet tall cliff appeared in front of him. She didn't have time to react to what was going on. Suddenly, his body, which was so heavy that he couldn't move at all, fell down the cliff at an extremely fast speed. It was extremely fast. Yiqing Luo could feel the sharp wind, like a knife, cutting her skin. The wind whistled past her ears, irritating her eardrums. She wanted to resist. However, his stiff body was unable to move. He took a deep breath to alleviate the pressure of falling. There was a sharp pain in her heart, causing her to be unable to concentrate. His body continued to fall, and continued to fall. It was like a bottomless abyss. No matter what, he couldn't touch the end point. Yiqing Luo tried her best to concentrate, as her vision suddenly fixed on a certain spot. Not too far away from her. An illusory figure was faintly discernible. Even though her falling speed was extremely fast. But that figure was still firmly fixed in her pupils. QQ Readings Character Ranking. May I trouble my babies to help me make a heart sign and label them. Not hoping to charge into the top 40, but to be able to maintain within the top 100. Chapter 39:16. Who was that? Yiqing Luo widened her eyes, trying to see the true face of that figure. However, the speed at which she was falling caused her eyes to be half open and blurry. Plus that figure seemed to be shrouded in a thin layer of white mist, illusory, making that figure look like an immortal, extremely mysterious. Yiqing Luo saw it even more unreal. Just as she was feeling bewildered, that figure suddenly moved, her wrist lifted lightly, the gauze slid down, revealing her fair wrist. Her slender fingers were as smooth as jade, and there was even a thin layer of pale velvet light lingering around them. Every move. It seemed to draw out a white ray, sweeping past Yiqing Luo's eyes. In her ear, she could faintly hear an inaudible gentle voice. "Child, close your eyes." That voice, gentle like the wind, seeped into her heart from her eardrums. Not knowing why, Yiqing Luo's heart actually had a kind of twitching feeling. It was as if he had been tightly gripped by an ice-cold palm. Made her breathing become tight. Almost like a physical instinct. She listened to that voice, closed her eyes. Which was the moment she closed her eyes. Yiqing Luo seemed to see that white ray, as fast as lightning, heading straight for her face. She couldn't react in time. Her brain suddenly flooded with a large piece of complex and obscure totem. Large piece after large piece, quickly eroding her brain. Her brain immediately seemed to be squeezed by these totem, about to explode. She wanted to hug her headache and groan. But her whole body seemed to be imprisoned by a strong force, unable to move. Not knowing if it was an illusion. The moment she closed her eyes, Lin Sanjia smiled. Her body seemed to have stopped falling, suspended in midair. Ugh, a painful groan came from her nose. The totem continued to surge, constantly converging towards her heart. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo felt a scorching heat in her heart. No. More accurately, it was the profound jade heart. A burst of scorching feeling hit her heart. Following that, there was a strange aura, surging around the profound jade heart. That aura was extremely unfamiliar. It didn't seem like the profound energy she was familiar with. What was going on? What on earth was this aura? What surprised Yiqing Luo the most was her body, after coming into contact with this unfamiliar aura. There was no resistance at all. Instead, it was like an open mouth greedily absorbing this strange and unfamiliar aura. This was the first time she had encountered such a strange situation. Yiqing Luo was startled and wanted to control her profound heart jade to prevent that unfamiliar qi from entering her body. However, there was resistance. The profound jade heart in his chest began to let out a sharp pain in protest. Her face instantly turned pale from the pain. She endured the pain with great difficulty. He quickly released his dark force to probe the strange aura in his body. However, the instant her profound energy intertwined with the unfamiliar aura. His profound energy actually took the initiative to entangle that aura. Yiqing Luo, what the hell was going on? She wanted to get in touch with old man Sung and ask him what was going on. But he didn't have time to connect his mental power with the azure dew bracelet. The profound heart jade suddenly sank again. The tearing pain once again messed up Yiqing Luo's thoughts. Relax, don't resist, follow your body's instincts, accept it, that gentle voice once again sounded beside her ear. Like a spring breeze, it soothed the sharp pain in her heart. Chapter 39:17. Her heart had loosened at this moment. Which also gave that unfamiliar aura a chance. That unfamiliar stream of air quickly rushed into the profound jade heart. Like a scorching fire, a scorching heat was rampaging within her profound jade heart. Again and again, it collided against her profound jade heart. This feeling was simply unspeakably bitter. But Yiqing Luo didn't even have a chance to resist. She could only forcefully endure this unfamiliar airflow's collision with her profound jade heart, which brought about a sharp pain and a feeling of being squeezed by something. The profound energy and airflow intertwined, spreading to her limbs and bones. The two energies intertwined within her body. From time to time, it was still like calm stagnant water, like ice, so cold that it made one shiver. And from time to time, it was like a stormy sea, surging unceasingly, like a raging fire burning. The feeling of sometimes cold, sometimes hot. It made Yiqing Luo really felt that she was about to expand with the heat and contract with the cold, and then explode with a bang. The two energies were still merging together. Yiqing Luo, who was suffering from the torment, seemed to be able to see the two energies surging within her body, forming a huge storm within. The two energies, in the midst of intertwining and merging, became more and more vigorous. She even heard her own body, under the envelopment of the energy, emitting a kacha-kacha sound. Her bones seemed to be torn into pieces by these two energies. Yiqing Luo felt that this was a feeling of the bones and limbs in her body being reconstructed. Just at this moment, her throat finally seemed to have opened up, as she opened her mouth to let out a painful roar. Her hands suddenly clenched tightly. Boundless energy converged on her arms. The air trembled. She felt a strong and overbearing profound energy flying out from her arms. Bang bang bang, deafening explosive sounds resounded all around. Yiqing Luo swiftly opened her eyes. The profound energy encircling her body swept out even more violently. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes, looking at her own body. That energy that was restraining her seemed to have been shaken off by her earlier. Her entire body was light, like a feather. Just a slight movement. His body, which was falling from the sky, stood firmly on the vast expanse of white nothingness. Yiqing Luo's first reaction was to search for that figure that she saw earlier. But no matter how she looked around, she had never realized that there was someone else besides her in this vast expanse of whiteness. Silence reigned. It was lifeless. In Yiqing Luo's mind, the image of that figure earlier appeared, as he whispered beside her ear. That figure was slender and soft. That voice was as gentle as water. It gave her a very familiar and intimate feeling. He thought about it carefully. His heart suddenly tightened. It was as if he was being pricked by a needle. She slowly lowered her arms. The energy surrounding his body was still circling around excitedly. Until now, what else did Yiqing Luo not understand? That figure was helping her reconstruct her body. After being cleansed by the marrow cleansing pill, her bones also started to reform. His entire body seemed to be filled with boundless power. That figure, he was helping her. But, why? Yiqing Luo couldn't understand. Suddenly, her ears twitched and she raised her head. In the vast expanse of whiteness, a huge palm stretched out. That hand pressed down on her. F***CK. What the hell is that? Yiqing Luo was about to evade. But that huge palm, accurately wrapped around her. It was like Buddha's five-finger mountain, firmly imprisoning her. But, it was only at this moment when she was imprisoned. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes blinked, as her struggling movements stopped. Chapter 39:18. Ah Xian's hand? What on earth was going on? When that large palm had completely wrapped her up, Yiqing Luo felt the rampant clamor in her body. The surging energy seemed to have been appeased as it settled down in her body. Following that, a man's mellow voice was heard from all directions. Gentle and affectionate, calling her name over and over again. Lil Luo, Lil Luo, Lil Luo, That call seemed to be filled with endless warmth and sweetness. Yiqing Luo's heart seemed to be touched by something. Following that large palm which was covering her body suddenly tightened. Her body also felt a huge pulling force. Bam! A buzzing sound rang beside her ear. The pulling force disappeared. It turned into the feeling of falling rapidly from a high altitude. The next moment, she suddenly opened her eyes and sat up with a whoosh. She opened her eyes wide as she looked straight ahead, panting heavily. Her body still had the feeling of falling. But what entered her eyes was a white gauze curtain with a few white tassels hanging down. It was no longer a vast expanse of whiteness. It was no longer endless silence. This place was not that lifeless place earlier. Yiqing Luo was just about to move. Her sides suddenly leaned against a warm and thick chest. Her petite body was stained with warmth. The man's long arm held her tightly in his embrace, as though he couldn't wait to rub her into his body. Lil Luo, you're finally awake." That voice in the vast expanse of whiteness was completely compatible with that voice, as it rang beside her ear at a close distance. A familiar smell. A familiar warmth. A familiar voice. It made Yiqing Luo's consciousness gradually return. Her long curly eyelashes fluttered. Suddenly she stretched out both hands and hugged the man in front of her, Xian. She opened her mouth. Her throat felt like it was on fire, as it was hoarse. Spitting out 2 words, her throat felt as though it was cut by a knife, as the pain was unbearable. The man immediately retreated for a while, as he raised his hand to bring up the warm water beside him. Yiqing Luo was about to take the water. But her chin was suddenly lifted by a slender finger. When he raised his head, he saw a face of peerless elegance magnifying in his eyes. The man's deep, black eyes were filled with love. The distance between the two was getting shorter and shorter. She was so close that she could even see the ripples in the man's eyes. She could even count the man's dense and long eyelashes one by one. The next moment, a wave of warmth and softness pressed against him. The warm water poured into her mouth. The water ran down his throat. It also alleviated the burning sensation in her throat. The man left her lips again. Yiqing Luo blushed slightly. "You." Just as he opened his mouth, he spat out a word. Then, the man's lips pressed against hers again. One mouthful after another. He poured a cup of warm water into Yiqing Luo's mouth. The man put down the cup and held her in his arms again. The warmth and taste of the man still lingered in her mouth. Yiqing Luo's cheeks were dyed red. "Shy." Dmo Xian lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms, as he gave an evil smile. Yiqing Luo's little hand grabbed his robe, as she tugged hard, but didn't say a word, using her actions to express her unhappiness. The man smiled even more happily. "When you were unconscious, I had been feeding you water like this. I'm already used to it, why be shy?" Yiqing Luo's face turned even redder. Chapter 39:19. The man put on a serious look, used to it, the body's reflex action. Yiqing Luo buried herself in his arms as she rolled her eyes. "How many days have I been unconscious for?" 2 days. Dmo Xian replied. 2 days. She thought she had been unconscious for 2 months. Which made Dmo Xian's body's reflex action. As though he saw through Yiqing Luo's thoughts. Dmo Xian held her little body as he brought her into his arms. The young lady's body left the bed and was brought into the man's arms. Immediately after, he lowered his head and whispered softly in her ear, "Used to taking care of you, this is my lifetime's habit." Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled slightly. She was touched. And there was also the man who intentionally blew past her ear, like a feather, tickling her heartstrings. Even though they had shared the same bed for such a long time. Even when facing Dmo Xian. She still couldn't help but blush and palpitate, unable to resist the temptation of Dmo Xian. The young lady avoided his playful lips as she stuffed her head into his shoulder, coughing lightly as she changed the topic. "I remember. Wasn't I knocked out by Zhu Wuxian's drug? Why did I wake up so quickly? Previously at Zhu Wuxian's place. Hadn't she been unconscious for nearly half a month? Moreover, she didn't notice it at all. This time, it was totally different." Recalling that vast expanse of whiteness earlier, and that mysterious figure, gentle voice, and the change in her body's bones. She kept all these memories. Totally different from the last time. The minute she woke up, she only remembered what happened in the upper realms passageway. "Because, you're too restless, so I forcefully woke you up." Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he looked at the person in his arms. The young lady buried her neck into his shoulder, revealing a fair neck, as though it was glowing. The dazzling whiteness made his gaze dim slightly. The arm which held the young lady's slender body tightened a little. Yiqing Luo didn't notice that the man's gaze on her had changed. After she heard the man's words, she even rubbed her head against the man's chest a few times before raising her head and stared at him. I'm very restless when I sleep. Restless. The man gazed at her with his deep eyes, and even his voice became deeper and sexier. You'll only be so tired when you sleep with me. Tired to the point of being content? How would Yiqing Luo not understand his hint? A scorching gaze. It was a deep and magnetic voice. And those words that made people blush. All of them made the young girl's heart beat as if it was tired. Her face was so hot that even her body was heating up. Her beautiful face was dyed red. It was like a slowly blooming rose, captivating the soul to the extreme. Dmo Xian abruptly tightened his arms. He was afraid that if he looked at this face that could make his heart flutter, he would be unable to control himself from wanting to hold her tightly in his arms. He hugged her tightly and said, "These 2 days, you have indeed been restless. Sometimes, your body is cold, and sometimes, it feels like it's burning. You even let out painful cries from time to time, as if you're in a deep sleep and in extreme pain. So, I can only enter your consciousness and wake you up. Infiltrate my consciousness?" Yiqing Luo recalled that the last thing she remembered was a huge palm floating down from the sky, imprisoning her. It was indeed because of Dmo Xian that she woke up from that vast expanse of whiteness. But what Yiqing Luo didn't know was, although Dmo Xian's words were spoken in a light tone, but the truth was, in these 2 days of deep sleep, Chapter 39-20. These 2 days had practically tortured him to the point of insanity. He was on the verge of collapse. Watching Yiqing Luo howling in pain in her sleep. Looking at Yiqing Luo's alternating between cold and hot, the agonizing look. He was powerless to solve this problem. Especially after hearing that old man Song was unable to get in touch with Yiqing Luo. It was like an invisible force, completely isolating Yiqing Luo from the outside world. Dmo Xian's heart was even more restless. Fortunately, Lil Luo woke up. This was the method that old man Song had taught him. Sneaking into Yiqing Luo's consciousness space, he brought her out from within. However, the dangers involved. He didn't intend to let Yiqing Luo know. As long as his little Luo woke up safely and returned to his side, that was enough. She could feel the slight ups and downs of the man's emotions. And the strength of his hands tightening. Yiqing Luo's chin rubbed against the man's chest. Then, she raised her head and smiled at the man's chin. Both hands also tightly encircled the man's waist. She knew what Dmo Xian was feeling right now. She also knew how Dmo Xian felt these 2 days. "Don't worry, I'm awake. I'm back. Am I not in your arms now?" The girl's soft voice was like a cat's paw, tickling the man's heart little by little. The girl's posture and angle, he could clearly see the young girl's exquisite face in the deepest part of his heart. His pupils suddenly shrank. He could vaguely see a dim stream of light moving about. In the next instant, the man raised his hand and pressed it against the back of the girl's head. "Bend over, lower your head." His thin lips pressed against the girl's lips. This kiss. It wasn't as simple as crossing the water like before. Instead, it was a fierce and passionate kiss. A man's elegant sandalwood scent filled her nose. It was as if he could knock her out at any time. Their lips were slightly cold. Everything was heating up. This kiss was domineering and filled with his wild aura. However, her movements were extremely gentle. His hands slowly wrapped around her slender waist. His palms were pressed against her waist, moving around incessantly. Ah Xian, Yiqing Luo couldn't catch her breath as she laid in the man's arms. Her hand that was holding onto the man's clothes lost its strength. Until Yiqing Luo's breathing tightened. Only then did the man release her. He hugged her tightly with both hands. His chin rested on the girl's slender shoulder, and his husky voice carried a hint of ambiguity. "Be good, just let me hug you." His voice was deep and magnetic. The elegant sandalwood fragrance had almost confused Yiqing Luo's consciousness. Especially that peerless beauty, the most bewitching face, which was so close to him. Yiqing Luo totally had no resistance at all as she sank into the beauty. The man's deep voice was slightly panting. It was very seductive. However, the man just hugged her obediently. How would Yiqing Luo not know that Dmo Xian was forcefully suppressing his desire for her? This man, although he usually flirted with her, took advantage of her, and said embarrassing things to her. But no matter what, she was the center of everything he did. No matter how uncomfortable he was only concerned about her. What a fool! Yiqing Luo's lips curled up into a sweet and blissful smile. She raised her hand and cupped the man's cheek. The man's face was hot. Just when she touched him, she could clearly feel the slight stiffness in her palm. Chapter 39-21. That peerless face was fully reflected in Yiqing Luo's pupils. The man's eyes were like a silver needle, piercing into her heart. The light in her charming eyes became softer. Her slender fingers gently traced the contours of the man's face. From his eyebrows to his eyes to his nose, and finally, her fingertips landed on his rosy lips. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes rose slightly, hooking into a coquettish arc. Her pair of fox-like eyes stared at his thin lips without blinking. Following that, the corners of her lips curled up frivolously. Her voice also became soft and charming. Since you flirted with someone, you should take responsibility till the end. The words fell. She had already leaned forward and covered the man's lips. The man's initiative and her initiative were totally different concepts. When the young lady's sweet breath approached, her gentle words were already a blatant hint. The man's eyes instantly turned pitch black. He held the young lady tightly and pressed her into his arms, turning from guest to host. From his throat, a low and sinister threat came out. You asked for it. When the time comes, don't beg for mercy. That mellow voice, because of the young lady's initiative, had been tainted with a thin layer of hoarseness. Lingering and charming, the warmth rose. Gulp, just at this moment, suddenly a sound that spoiled the mood, rang in the room. The two of them, who were stuck close to each other, immediately froze. Gulp gulp, following that sound rang again. Dmo Xian half propped up his body, slightly glanced sideways. His line of sight fell on the young lady's flat abdomen. The young lady's robe was in a mess, revealing her fair skin. When Dmo Xian's line of sight swept over, Yiqing Luo let out an ah, then pushed away the man who was half propped up, lifted the quilt and covered her head. Vaguely, she could still hear the man's low chuckle. Yiqing Luo clutched the quilt. She couldn't wait to bang her head into the quilt. So shameful. She took the initiative to seduce Dmo Xian. She didn't expect her stomach to be so disappointing. At this juncture, it was actually so hungry that it was growling. Did it need to be so embarrassing? Mushroom. Blue skinny. Yiqing Luo silently cursed her stomach 100 times in her heart. Suddenly she felt a broad palm, covering her quilt. Her body stiffened. The man's mellow and smiling voice floated down from above. It's my fault. I forgot that you've been unconscious for 2 days. You must be hungry. Following the man's words, she could feel the man slowly bending down to the side of the blanket and talking to her at a close distance. Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned even redder. She clutched the quilt and remained motionless. Good girl, let's go eat first. Dmo Xian coaxed. Under Dmo Xian's half coaxing and half dragging, Yiqing Luo slowly lifted up a corner of the blanket, revealing a guilty little face. Then you. Are you really all right? Previously, he had endured it. But she insisted on taking the initiative. This was what it meant by flirting and not wanting to take responsibility. Dmo Xian lifted the blanket and carried her up from the bed. As the girl screamed in surprise, she hooked her arms around his neck. He chuckled and whispered into her ear, "It doesn't matter. After you're full, it'll be my turn to feed me." Yi Qing Luo, she really shouldn't feel guilty. Of course, what Dmo Xian said about being fed by the girl after he was full, was finally left unsettled. Because after Yi Qing Luo had freshened up and followed Dmo Xian out for a meal. Chapter 39-22. After finding out that the reason why Yi Qing Luo was unconscious was because of that fellow Zhu Wu Xian, he immediately exploded. Old Lai, in particular, slammed the table, his beard widened. "What? That kid actually dared to drug you? You just wait, I'll bring the Hell Palace's people right now and screw up his red clear pavilion." With that, Lao Lai rolled up his sleeves and walked toward the door. He took a few steps. Sensing that something was amiss, Zhang Xian halted his footsteps once more and turned to look at the group of people staring at him. Even as he rolled up his sleeves, he asked, "Aren't you all going to stop me?" Everyone shook their heads in unison. Even the person involved, Yi Qing Luo, had an incomparable tacit understanding as she shook her head, "Not stopping, not stopping. How can we stop Old Lai's decision? Go on, I have high hopes for you." Lao Lai, both of them stared at each other for a few seconds. Old Lai slowly put down his sleeves and coughed softly. "Forget it. Looking at you, you don't seem to want to take revenge on that brat. I'm too lazy to move my old bones." As he spoke, he slowly moved back to his seat. Zhou Mo clicked his tongue and lazily lifted his eyelids. He cast a sidelong glance at Old Lai and sneered. "This young master has heard that this Hell Palace is a madhouse, a gathering place for lunatics. Why, would lunatics also be afraid of Zhu Wuxin?" Lao Lai's eyes widened. "I'm scared. What's there to be afraid of? I didn't want to put Madame D in a difficult position." "Oh." Zhou Mo raised his eyebrows and dragged out the last syllable. Old Lai's face was flushed red with anger as he pressed the table and stood up, pointing at Yi Qing Luo. "Red Clearness Pavilion, Red Clearness Pavilion. Just by hearing this name, you can tell that this Red Clearness Pavilion was built for Madame D. One must know that this Red Clear Pavilion was a mysterious force that had been famous in the upper realm since a few years ago. Several years ago. A few years ago, Zhu Wuxin had chosen this name for Lady D. Didn't this mean that Lady D had a good relationship with Zhu Wuxin? If I go to the Red Clear Pavilion and cause trouble for Madame D, I'll feel so wronged." Old Lai rattled off a string of words. There was no pause at all. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the hall became heavy. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop on the ground. The crowd sighed helplessly, as they silently mourned for him as they shook their heads. "Whether Qing Luo will find trouble with you, we don't know, but what we know is, now, you're in deep trouble." Lao Lai suddenly felt a chill on his back as he felt an inexplicable chill. His neck twisted stiffly. She then met with Dmo Xian's icy cold eyes. Lao Lai's mouth trembled, and he immediately gave in. Yi Qing Luo naturally felt the low pressure from the man beside her. She rolled her eyes at Old Lai and stretched out her little hand to hold Dmo Xian's large palm as she said, "Don't listen to his nonsense. I only found out that Red Clear Pavilion's pavilion master is Zhu Wu Xian during the auction." She paused slightly and continued, "As for why he named it Red Clearness Pavilion, I'm not too sure, but..." Her brows sunk slightly as her gaze turned slightly gloomy. "This time round, he still chose to stand on the opposite side of me, and made use of my trust towards him, attempting to repeat the same trick on me. His trust in me has already turned to zero." Trusting someone was very difficult. Bit by bit, slowly accumulating trust. There was a possibility that because of one matter, it would completely crumble. Chapter 39-23. Lil Luo, Dmo Xian looked at the young lady's sunken expression. although her head was lowered and her fine black hair covered her expression. But Dmo Xian could clearly feel that Yi Qing Luo's current mood was very gloomy. His long arms scooped and brought the young lady into his arms. Perhaps his obsession with you is too deep and he was bewitched by secluded palace. Yi Qing Luo laid in Dmo Xian's arms openly, feeling the warmth from his body, soothing the gloomy mood in her heart. She moved her little head in his arms. Her chin rested on his chest. She raised her head slightly and suddenly laughed. He's your love rival, why are you still helping him to speak up? According to Dmo Xian's character, she felt repelled towards Zhu Wu Xian. He should be happier than anyone else. But he actually helped Zhu Wu Xian to speak up. TSK, did the sun rise from the west today? Dmo Xian's slender fingers pinched her nose as he gently pinched it. Following that, he bent over slightly. That handsome face came close to Yi Qing Luo's face. The surrounding crowd. Why did it feel like they were being neglected? But luckily, the two of them who were extremely intimate still had some conscience. They didn't really engage in lovey-dovey activities in front of everyone. Dmo Xian's face stopped at a distance of about a fist away from Yi Qing Luo. His crimson thin lips curled up slightly as he revealed a devilish smile. His slender fingers slowly slid from her nose to the area between her brows as he gently rubbed it. I just don't want to see you frowning here, showing a worried look. Yi Qing Luo's heart suddenly soared. A faint smile unknowingly appeared in her eyes. Her arms hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck as she smiled like a flower. Seeing this face of yours has healed my body and mind. The two of them smiled at each other as their eyes were filled with tenderness and sweetness. The surrounding crowd. Alright, although the two of them weren't really lovey-dovey. But this feeling, as compared to lovey-dovey, was even more stimulating. But Yi Qing Luo's mood, indeed, rose by a lot. In the main hall, everyone was bustling. However, in a dark corner not far away, there seemed to be a layer of frost covering it. Some of the servants of the Qiao mansion who passed by felt an inexplicable shiver. In the dark, a red figure was faintly discernible. The man's face was as cold as ice, without the slightest emotion. Especially those eyes that were like stagnant water. It was as if he would freeze to death under his ice with just a glance. He wasn't close to the hall, but he wasn't far either. He could clearly hear all the voices in the hall. In his mind, the girl's clear voice kept repeating over and over again, his trust in me has been reduced to zero. Trust, did she no longer trust him? He just wanted to keep her by his side. He just didn't want her to treat him so coldly again. Obviously, she belonged to him, didn't she? Did he really do something wrong? Zhu Wuxin's hands that were hanging by his side slowly clenched. Blue veins popped out of his fist. It was as if he was suppressing some kind of emotion in his heart. Suddenly, his hand opened up as his vision swiftly turned towards a certain direction behind him. His eyes, which were like still water, turned into a sharp blade as it shot out. Young Patriarch Chu, don't, it's me. Chapter 39-24. Zhu Wuxin's expression didn't change at all when he saw who it was. That slender and soft figure leaned against Zhu Wu Xian's body. Young Master Zhu, scram. The slender figure had yet to approach him. Zhu Wuxin flicked his sleeve, avoiding the woman's approach. An invisible wave of air isolated the woman a step away from him. The woman didn't get angry. Instead, she looked at him with a smile. Young Master Chu, why are you hiding here alone? Don't worry, as long as you follow the instructions of the revered Yi Qing Luo, will definitely belong to you. Zhu Wuxin's eyes flashed. The lady naturally didn't miss his reaction as she smiled delicately. You must know, even if Yi Qing Luo is with the Overlord now, but they will absolutely not be able to walk to the end. Only young Patriarch Chu, who has been recognized by the Overlord, is Yi Qing Luo's future husband. Zhu Wuxin's pupils suddenly constricted. he didn't even look at the woman. He moved. It disappeared into thin air. Not even a red afterimage was left behind. The woman quietly looked at the horizon in the direction that Zhu Wuxin had disappeared. The smile on his face faded, and his eyes were like those of a venomous snake, flickering with an insidious ruthlessness. He clenched his fists tightly. Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Whether it was Di Zun or Zhu Wuxin, all of them were circling around Yiqing Luo. What was so good about her? *TCH. The atmosphere in the room was still warm. The silent Gue Wu, who had been leaning against the corner, suddenly raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo. His gaze was direct. Just as he was about to look at Yiqing Luo, Yiqing Luo had already sensed his line of sight and met Ghost Marshal's gaze in puzzlement. Gue Wu slowly walked towards Yiqing Luo until he stood in front of her. Yiqing Luo was nestled in Dmo Xian's arms. Gue Wu stood up. He was also facing Dmo Xian. But Gue Wu's line of sight, from the start till the end, had remained on Yiqing Luo. It was a young and handsome face. But those eyes were full of hardships and complicated emotions that no one could see through. Yiqing Luo felt uncomfortable being stared at. She shifted her body and adjusted her position in Dmo Xian's arms as she coughed lightly. "Ghost Martial Master?" There were no ripples in Ghost Marshal's deep and cold eyes. However, the words that came out of his mouth were like a raging storm. "Your body has undergone a transformation." Huh? Dumbfounded expressions appeared on everyone's faces, as they did not understand the meaning behind Gue Wu's words. Yiqing Luo was slightly startled. She naturally knew what the change that Gue Wu was talking about was. She was surprised. Gue Wu had actually seen through this point. Gue Wu stared at Yiqing Luo for some time before he suddenly narrowed his eyes in an unfathomable manner. "Looks like the 2 days you were in a coma, not only did it not affect your body, instead, it allowed your body to improve. What kind of riddle are you guys playing?" Zhou Mo raised his red phoenix eyes and asked. Gue Wu looked at Zhou Mo and said indifferently, "Student Yiqing Luo's body has undergone transformation. Now her bone structure has already broken away from the mortal body and can withstand even more powerful than an overlord." Transform? Leaving the mortal body? Was he talking about Yiqing Luo? Everyone's gazes shifted onto Yiqing Luo in unison. That blatant gaze made Yiqing Luo burrow into Dmo Xian's arms and even took up Dmo Xian's arm to block in front of her. Chapter 39-25. Everyone shook their heads in unison. "I have never seen a beauty who has left her mortal body." Yiqing Luo. She couldn't be bothered with them as she set her sight on Gue Wu. It seemed that Gue Wu was very clear about the transformation of the bone frame. After pondering for a moment, she asked, "Master Gue Wu, from what you've said, does this mean that my body can now withstand even more powerful strength?" She paused slightly and continued with an example. "For example, if I use the power of the divine relic?" Gue Wu met Yiqing Luo's vague hopeful gaze and nodded slowly. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up. Previously, she had forcefully used the power of the divine relic to raise her strength in a short period of time to tide over the crisis. The price she had to pay was the overdraft of her body. And the divine phoenix profound heart jade in her body was likely to cause a backlash. All these reasons stemmed from the fact that her body could not withstand the overload of power. Now, her body, her bone frame, had been reconstructed. All the impurities had been eliminated. Separated from the mortal body. After withstanding the power of the divine relic and even more powerful forces, her body could finally bear it. But under Yiqing Luo's bright eyes, Gue Wu suddenly said, "Don't be happy too early. Even if your bone frame has been transformed, it doesn't mean that you can mess around." When she was still a mortal body, Yiqing Luo time and time again did something which made one worried. If she relied on her body to withstand the powerful forces to mess around, no matter how solid the foundation was, it would be exhausted over and over again. Yiqing Luo's spirit would not be able to bear it. I know. Yiqing Luo nodded seriously. I won't mess around. Everyone made a tisk sound. Apparently no one believed Yiqing Luo's guarantee. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and knocked on her head. You'd better remember what you said now. Yiqing Luo felt pain as she turned her head and stared at him. Why don't you believe what I said? Dmo Xian sneered. Do you think that you believe what you said? Yiqing Luo. Alright, based on her previous behavior. She didn't believe it herself. Dmo Xian dangerously narrowed his eyes and held her chin. Why? Tacit approval? That deep voice carried an obvious threat. Yiqing Luo was forced to look him in the eye. She didn't even dare to avoid his eyes. Her long eyelashes blinked for a while, but Dmo Xian still maintained that dangerous smile. Her honey trap did not work at all. Therefore, he decisively gave in. How could there be a tacit agreement? This is a very serious expression. I will definitely remember what I'm saying now. Dmo Xian seemed to believe it as he nodded lightly. Yiqing Luo let out a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to squirm out from Dmo Xian's embrace. Her waist tightened, and her delicate body was pressed into the man's arms again. Then, he lowered his magnetic voice and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, if you can't remember it, I'll use my own method to make you remember it, his last 4 words. He even deliberately lowered his voice. That magnetic, seductive, and drawn-out voice carried another kind of emotion. Yiqing Luo's face suddenly flushed red. What a shameless man. Everyone was already used to their little interactions and didn't notice Yiqing Luo's blushing face. Chapter 39-26. Yiqing Luo was stunned and hurriedly stood up from Dmo Xian's arms. Yes. Old Master Huangfu wants to bring those 3 back to the Huangfu family. She wondered how Pei Sheng and Old Master Huangfu had developed over the past 2 days. She was not worried about Pei Sheng's safety. 2 days ago, the assassins sent by Huangfu Fengyan failed to assassinate Pei Sheng, startling the old man. Even if the 3 of them wanted to make another move, they did not have the opportunity. Of course, if they made a move against Pei Sheng at this critical juncture, he was definitely digging his own grave. No matter how stupid they were, they would never do that. Moreover, that kid, Pei Sheng, had already evolved now, and he knew how to transform into a white lotus flower, to protect himself and Gu Zishi so that he could strive for the greatest benefits for himself and Gu Zishi. Therefore, a person's growth had to depend on their own efforts. If she interfered too many times, it would only make Pei Sheng more dependent on her. In the end, no one gave him any advice, and he fell into a state of confusion. As though she could see through Yiqing Luo's thoughts, Mo Yuing opened her round adorable big eyes and opened her mouth. They get along very well, and I can tell that old Master Huangfu sincerely wants to bring Pei Sheng home. Yiqing Luo nodded. Let's go take a look. Perhaps we can still make it in time to send old master off. In next to no time, the group arrived at the treasure-gathering exchange. After 2 days of repair, the houses that had been destroyed by the assassins had been temporarily repaired, so it wasn't too messy. Just as the group walked into treasure-gathering hall, a slender figure stood in the middle of the hall. That person had a tall and straight posture, a grave and stern face, and an outstanding temperament. He just stood there in silence. It could attract everyone's attention. Yiqing Luo and the rest naturally set their sights on that person first. At that moment, everyone's expression changed. Kitty Li was the most impatient. She suddenly jumped out of Zhou Mo's arms and pounced towards that person. You actually dare to appear here? Kitty will scratch you to death. Little wild cat. Zhou Mo's expression changed slightly, and he immediately chased after it. Before that person could make a move, he pulled Kitty Li into his arms. With a quick roll, he dodged the man's attack. Meanwhile, a black figure moved and quickly appeared in front of Zhou Mo. With a raise of his hand, a black light condensed. The two forces collided, creating traces of electricity. It was tight and gradually dissipated. The shockwaves in the air gradually subsided. This unforeseen event caused the atmosphere in the hall to become even more tense. The group of people stared at that person with tensed emotions. The man turned around and looked at them expressionlessly. Finally, a pair of cold eyes that were as calm as still water fell onto Yiqing Luo. "Why are you guys here?" Suddenly, Huang Fuzhentian walked out from the inner court with a smile on his face. The smile on his face was very sincere. His previous majesty was nowhere to be seen. As he walked out, he smiled at the expressionless man and said, "Pavilion Master Chu, I'll have to trouble you to wait for me." "It doesn't matter." The man's thin lips moved slightly as he spat out these 3 words. Huang Fuzhentian was still smiling. As he smiled, he felt that the atmosphere in the hall wasn't right. He took a look at the expressionless man beside him and looked at the tensed-up group of people who were glaring angrily. Cough. "You guys should all know each other. This is Red Clear Pavilion's Pavilion Master Chu Wu Xian. This side are that fellow Pei Xing's friends." Chapter 39-27. After the introduction, he eased the atmosphere and continued, "I heard that Miss Yi and Pavilion Master Chu are old acquaintances, so I don't think I need to introduce you any further." "No need." Zhu Wu Xian stared at Yiqing Luo. "I understand her better than anyone else." Huang Fuzhentian, why does it feel like the atmosphere is getting weirder and weirder? Yiqing Luo and the rest looked at Zhu Wu Xian warily. He truly hadn't expected Chu Wuxin to appear at the treasure-gathering exchange. Moreover, it seemed like they were here to cause trouble. Yiqing Luo had not expected to meet Zhu Wu Xian here. She thought that Zhu Wuxin would not dare to appear before her in the near future. What astonished Yiqing Luo the most was, Chu Wuxin had actually changed out of his usual red clothes. Today, he was dressed in a white robe, which made him look even more cold and aloof. The unapproachable aura around him was even more obvious. To be honest, although Chu Wuxin was dressed in red, his temperament did not seem out of place. But it was obvious that he was more suited for white. This color was too compatible with him. However, Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. There was an indescribable feeling of unease in his heart. If I remember correctly, Chu Wuxin had always been dressed in red. This was because the original owner, Yiqing Luo, had once said to let him always wear red clothes. Chu Wuxin kept this in mind. He also used his actions to show how much he valued the original owner. But now, she had actually swapped out her red dress. This represented that he had let go of Yiqing Luo. She was not reminiscing about Zhu Wuxin's feelings for her. It was not because Zhu Wuxin had let go of this relationship and felt that it was a pity. Instead, somehow, he felt that something was wrong. Zhu Wu Xian's sudden change was really too strange. Would someone as stubborn as Chu Wuxin really give up so easily? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly as her little hand gently held the man's big palm beside her. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man. He also transmitted the uneasiness and doubts in his heart. The girl subconsciously relied on him. The man, who was not in a good mood, suddenly smiled. He held the young girl's small hand, his long and narrow peach blossom eyes were filled with a faint smile. With one hand, he pulled her into his embrace and soothed the uneasiness in the girl's heart. When the girl's breathing calmed down, Dmo Xian then slowly raised his head. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes no longer had the tenderness from earlier, as he calmly and indifferently looked at Zhu Wu Xian, Pavilion Lord Chu, long time no see. Zhu Wuxin did not respond. But his line of sight was fixed on the man's hand, which was holding the girl tightly. Dmo Xian shot a glance at his own hand which was wrapped around the young lady's body as his thin lips curled up slightly, containing some ridicule. Since Pavilion Lord Chu said that you understand Lil Luo, don't tell me that you don't know that Lil Luo, doesn't want to see you at all? Zhu Wuxian's eyes finally reacted, like ripples on the surface of water. But in the next instant, everything returned to normal. Huang Fu Zhentian realized it. The two sides were not on good terms with each other. He, who was stuck between the two of them, felt a little embarrassed. Fortunately, Pei Sheng and Gu Zixi sensed that the atmosphere outside was not right and came out in time. Chapter 39-28. Zhu Wuxian returned to Heaven Realm? In that case, Zhu Wuxian was indeed someone from Heaven Realm? Then why did he hide in Nirvana Realm? Back then, he was pursued by others and hid in Yiqing Luo's courtyard, creating a past with Yiqing Luo. Later on in Nirvana Realm, he established his own force. What identity did he have? At this moment, to rush back to Heaven Realm. Was it because of her or was it a part of Secluded Palace's plan? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as her suspicions towards Zhu Wuxian grew. 2 days ago, he drugged her. He probably wanted to bring her back to Heaven Realm? You woke up very quickly. Zhu Wuxian's icy cold voice interrupted Yiqing Luo's thoughts. It also interrupted her probing gaze. That drug won't have any effect on your body. I won't do anything to hurt you. Zhu Wuxian looked at her fixedly as he explained word by word, I came to treasure gathering because I wanted to wait for you. Not waiting for Yiqing Luo to reply. Kitty Li's face had already turned red from anger as she flailed around in Zhou Mo's arms. Pooey. What won't hurt sister, what you did is hurting sister. Drugging sister and still dare to appear in front of sister. Frivolous man, don't stop Kitty, Kitty wants to scratch him to death. Zhu Wuxian didn't even blink his eyes. He turned a deaf ear to Kitty Li's accusations. His gaze had been fixed on Yiqing Luo from the start till the end. His gaze was calm without any fluctuation of emotions. But Yiqing Luo could clearly feel that the gaze he shot towards her was scorching hot. She frowned slightly as her expression turned cold. What are you waiting for me for? I want to speak to you alone. Zhu Wuxian said. No way. Kitty Li rejected without thinking. Zhu Wuxian looked at Yiqing Luo quietly, waiting for her reply. Yiqing Luo's lips pursed even tighter. The man beside her suddenly pushed her body forward. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she looked at him sideways. But towards Dmo Xian's doting eyes. Like obsidian, it shone with an eye-catching radiance. Looking over, what was reflected in his eyes was her face. He raised his hand and brushed away the stray hair on the girl's cheek. The person who understands you best is me. Go. Beside her cheek was the touch of a man's fingertips. It carried a man's elegant sandalwood scent. Her eyelashes fluttered. Suddenly, his small body leaned forward. She hooked her wrist around the man's neck. She abruptly pulled the man down, then tiptoed and planted a kiss on his lips. The girl's eyes were full of smiles. Good boy. She withdrew her hand and took a few steps back from Dmo Xian. The moment he turned around, the expression on his face became indifferent. All right. This word was a reply to Zhu Wuxin. After saying those words, she took the lead and walked toward the inner courtyard. Zhu Wuxian was stunned for a moment. To be more precise, it was from the moment Dmo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo tightly, that indistinctly provocative sentence, the person who understands you the most, is me. His thoughts were a little absent-minded. Especially when he saw Yiqing Luo taking the initiative to kiss Dmo Xian. His heart felt like it was being torn apart by something. Until the young lady's figure disappeared from his sight. Only then did Zhu Wuxian's calm eyes ripple. Following that, he chased up to Yiqing Luo's footsteps. At the same time, Zhou Mo Xian raised his devilish phoenix eyes and was about to tease, Yo. I didn't expect our overlord to be so magnanimous, he actually. Chapter 39-29. Because, the air pressure in the lobby instantly turned frosty. The air seemed to have frozen. Everyone couldn't help but shiver. They all turned to look at the D-Zune, who was sitting stiffly at the side with a gloomy face. That handsome and elegant face was covered with frost. His entire body was burning with an aura that was about to explode. Everyone, in front of Yiqing Luo, his magnanimity and generosity were all an act. Inner courtyard. Yiqing Luo stopped in her tracks as she turned her head to look at Zhu Wu Xian. What do you want to say? He turned his head. Coincidentally, he bumped into a white robe. This was the first time he saw Zhu Wuxin wearing white, so he was not used to it. Her momentary daze was seen by Zhu Wuxin. The lines on Zhu Wu Xian's face clearly softened. Even his gaze towards Yiqing Luo had turned gentle. I know, you don't want to see me. Why did you still appear when you knew? Do you really think that I really don't dare to make a move against you? Yiqing Luo's expression turned cold. Zhu Wuxin shook his head. I want to see you. Yiqing Luo replied, just because you want to see me, I must see you. I'm going to Heaven Realm for a period of time and there's a possibility that I won't be able to see you for a very long period of time. Zhu Wu Xian seemed as though he couldn't hear the impatience in Yiqing Luo's tone. While he was talking, his eyes were fixed on Yiqing Luo without blinking. His tone was sincere and serious. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her eyes suddenly narrowed. Zhu Wu Xian, you're going to Heaven Realm. Is it because of Secluded Darkness Palace's plan? Zhu Wuxin opened his mouth, wanting to speak. But, after meeting Yiqing Luo's smiling yet not smiling expression, the words at the tip of his tongue were stuck in his throat. He lowered his eyes slightly, avoiding Yiqing Luo's gaze. I know, you don't like people lying to you, so. This question, I'm unable to answer you. In other words, I guessed correctly. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. Zhu Wu Xian, didn't you say that you've already cancelled the collaboration with the Palace of Darkness? Why did you return to the Palace of Darkness? Clearly, her voice was very calm. Even his tone did not fluctuate in the slightest. Yet, it brought with it an extremely oppressive feeling. Zhu Wuxin's head was still lowered, not looking at Yiqing Luo's expression. Evidently, he had decided to remain silent. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. If Zhu Wu Xian was unwilling to answer, no matter how she asked, Zhu Wu Xian would not answer. She simply couldn't be bothered to communicate with Zhu Wuxin anymore. Since you don't want to talk, you specially came to find me just to bid farewell? Yes. This time, Zhu Wuxin responded. He even raised his head. Also, I want to tell you, Zhu Wuxin pursed his thin lips. This was something he had never done before. Yiqing Luo could tell that he was nervous. Zhu Wu Xian was silent for several breaths of time. Then, he continued, previously, I did something that made you unhappy, but I do not regret it. Because I want you to accompany me. Yiqing Luo laughed in anger. You want me to accompany you so you make use of my trust in you to drug me? Zhu Wuxin, you claim that you understand me, but are you sure that you really understand me? Zhu Wuxin continued to stare at her with his extremely dark eyes. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, he then shook his head as his voice became gentler. I don't regret what I did. The only thing I regret is to make use of your trust. Yiqing Luo laughed out of anger once again. She expressed that she really couldn't understand Zhu Wu Xian's train of thought. I only want to tell you, everything that I did was not entirely for myself. Chapter 39-30. What do you mean? What did he mean by be careful of the people around her? The people around her were either lovers or brothers. They had gone through life and death together. They were all people she could absolutely trust. Zhu Wu Xian didn't say much. He raised his hand and stretched it towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo was astute as she avoided Zhu Wu Xian's hand with a vigilant look. Zhu Wu Xian's hand froze in midair. Several breaths later, his slender fingers retracted one by one. His dark and gloomy eyes looked at her with an obvious sadness. As though Yiqing Luo's actions had hurt him. But Yiqing Luo could only capture this little bit, a peculiar emotion. By the time she wanted to delve deeper into it, Zhu Wu Xian had already leapt onto the top of the wall. His white robe fluttered, showing his cold and aloof arrogance, like a winter plum. He stood on top of the wall and gazed deeply at Yiqing Luo for a moment. Following that, he had already disappeared from Yiqing Luo's vision. Yiqing Luo's brows knitted tightly as she retracted her gaze. What did Zhu Wu Xian mean? Why did he say such things to her out of nowhere? Based on Zhu Wu Xian's character, he would say such things. It shouldn't be as simple as sowing discord. He must have heard some news from the secluded palace. She didn't know what was wrong with Zhu Wu Xian, since he had already appeared to remind her. Couldn't he just make things clear before he left? It was better not to say anything than to leave half of it. She was cursing silently in her heart. Suddenly, she felt a tight grip on her waist. A scorching and wide embrace enveloped her completely. Her body was being held tightly by someone. On top of her head, there was a heavy object as a mellow voice with a smile yet not a smile floated down. He's already gone far away and you still haven't regained your senses. Could it be that you can't bear for him to leave? That voice, obviously had a hint of laughter. But Yiqing Luo heard the sarcasm in it. Yiqing Luo hurriedly stretched out her hand and hugged the person's waist. No, I'm just thinking about what he said earlier. On top of her head, the man sneered. His laughter was a little cold. Yiqing Luo rubbed against his arms but it wasn't able to alleviate the man's gloomy atmosphere. Pei Sheng and the others had already walked in. On seeing Yiqing Luo, he cried out and started to complain, "Ah Luo ah. Don't think that the overlord appeared to be very magnanimous. The minute you and Zhu Wu Xian arrived at the inner courtyard, his entire person was like a huge ice mountain. We're about to be frozen into ice." As soon as he finished speaking, Dmo Xian shot him a glare. Pei Sheng was so frightened by his sharp gaze that she immediately covered her mouth. Nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, Yiqing Luo sighed helplessly. Her small hands clutched Dmo Xian's clothes as she slowly raised her head. Even without Pei Sheng's explanation, she was well aware of it. Dmo Xian was the king of vinegar. How could he really not mind her being alone with Zhu Wuxin? He dotingly took the initiative to let her speak to Zhu Wuxin alone. He just didn't want to make things difficult for her. Of course, it was also because he believed in the relationship between her and Zhu Wuxin. But Yiqing Luo also knew that he was feeling rather unhappy. Just like now. After sensing that Zhu Wuxin's aura had disappeared, filled with unhappiness, he looked for her to pacify him. "All right, my obedient Xian." Her hand followed his clothes and stretched out to his face. Following that, her fingers pinched. Pulling the corners of the man's lips, he pulled out a smile. My Xian is even more enchanting when he smiles. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.